She's our pro. And we'll have 4 others of us who are former retirees from OSU, and we'll be the amateurs. So we'll have the pro and the amateurs. Dr. Aldwin is director of the Center for Healthy Aging here on campus. She got her degree at the University of California, San Francisco. She did a postdoc at UC Irvine. She worked at UC Davis, and now she's director here. So we're very glad to have you, and we expect some great ideas about retirement, maybe that even some of us who've been retired for a long time can use. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. So I am happy to entertain questions throughout discussion. Whatever you guys want to do is fine with me. This is not so much data heavy, more concepts, but I do have some data. So what I want to talk about is basically how to adapt to retirement. And let me instantly say there's no one way. There's no way that works for everyone. But there are huge individual differences in what people want to do and in how people do it. The question is, what makes sense for you and your family and your circumstances? Okay, so it's a crucial life change. It occurs in everyday life, right? And so it changes the patterns of your life a lot. I've got to say, so when I was in graduate school about 800 years ago, there was still mandatory retirement at age 65, and earlier for airline pilots and police and firemen and things like that. And this was considered to be a terrible thing to do, right? Because we were throwing people away. And there's lots of anecdotal evidence that it was bad for your health, right? And the primary example of that, how many of you guys remember Bill Bryant? Okay. He was the winningest coach at Bama, okay? And he died like 2 days after he retired. And this was, so retirement is really bad for you. And we need to stop throwing our seniors away. They have a lot to contribute. And so they started lifting mandatory retirement ages, right? And expecting that people would keep working because they loved it so much. Guess what happened? As soon as people could, they retired. The retirement age went down, right? Rather than allowing everybody to keep working who wanted to work, which it did, but most people retire as soon as it's financially feasible, right? And that puts a lot of pressure on the system. And so Social Security and various pensions have been gradually raising the age at which you can retire and get full benefits. They tried to do that in France. The retirement age was 55. They tried to raise it to 60, and they had riots in the street. I mean, just seriously, riots in the street. They didn't want that to happen. But with the economic downturn, in 2009, it started going back up again. And also now with the pressure that for most of you in the room, full age of retirement is probably 66 for the Social Security pension, right? And so, but that triggered a whole lot of research in retirement, which I did way back when. And so I wanted to talk about 3 things that we learned. One of which is that retirement is complicated, right? I thought we'd have, are you retired? Yes, no. No, we have like 8 different categories, right? There's some people who retire and they stop working. They don't want to do it anymore. They don't have to, great, right? But lots and lots of people work part-time, right? Especially among professionals, people like to transition. If you're a physician, you might get a junior person in with your practice and start cutting back your hours. Ditto for lawyers. And the like, at OSU and other places, you can relinquish tenure and work for 3 years part-time as a transition out. Some people start up in the field, right? Some people are retired but work full-time, right? So you can change jobs in the same field. So a lot of academics, for example, once they've put in 20 years and get a full pension at University X, or move to University Y, right? And get another pension, usually not full, but they can get 2 pensions. The military folks do this a lot. They're called double dippers. So in the military, you can get a pension after 20 years, right? So if you're 18 or 20, go to the military, you're about 38, 40. You go in and get usually often a federal government job because there's preferential hiring for vets. And you put another 20 years and you get 2 pensions, right? That's a pretty sweet deal. Some people actually will go and create new jobs and businesses. And actually the AARP says that there are more new businesses started by people in their 50s and 60s than people in their 20s and 30s. Okay? A good example of that is a friend of mine who's a professor over when we used to have design in the College of Health and Human Sciences then, loved fabric. And she got together with another faculty retired in the fabric store, right? So a lot of new people, will actually start businesses and things like that. Some people hate it and they just go back to work, right? This is not for them. After a month or 2 months, they can't see anything, they just need to do stuff. And then there's the folks who are disabled or unemployed. And they're sort of hanging on by their fingertips often until they reach retirement age and qualify for a pension. And during the last recession, you saw a huge spike in social SSI, which is the insurance for disabilities, because so many people were laid off in their 50s and they couldn't get work. And so most folks have some sort of health problem you can point to, and they went on disability instead. And actually, the curve was not surprising, right? But far from the original idea of getting rid of mandatory retirement age because we were making people miserable, actually, most people really like it once they figure out how to do it, right? So, because retirement brings a whole lot of change, right? So most people have spent 40 years, right, in the workforce, something like that. That's, 2/3 of your life. And you sort of get used to the routine, you have friends. A lot of people's identity is really tied up in their work and what they do. I spent a little bit of time down at Stanford, and the National Institute on Aging was trying to get the Stanford Psych Department faculty to look at aging research. And so they took a few of us, and we went down there and tried to say, what these wonderful things you can learn, right? And to a man, and most were men, they took me aside and said, I'm a full professor at Stanford. I can't retire. Well, who would I be if I were a full professor at Stanford, right? They were really ego invested in that identity. And that can be really hard to give up, right? Especially if you're really good at your job, you have a lot of people looking up to you. If you're a professor, you can become emeritus, which sort of softens the blow a little bit, but that's not true for a whole lot of folks. And so once you stop being the ace administrator, right, who can solve any problem, or the really good physician who's great at saving lives, right, or the person who simply might run the office and there's no problems because you anticipate them so well, right? What do you do when you don't have that identity? What do you substitute for? That's a big challenge. What do you do? Your relationships change, okay? You all have heard the standard joke, I married you for better or for worse, but not for lunch, right? Mm-hmm. So most people don't want to spend 24/7 with their spouse, right? And so all of a sudden you have to negotiate who does what, right? If you're still working and your spouse is retired, maybe he or she should take on more of the chores, but they've never done that before, right? Or maybe they try to invade your space and you have your garden the way you want it, or you have the kitchen cooking the way you want it, and you really don't want someone else there, right? So there's all these things you need to negotiate. Or, and I've got to say the sad thing, when we did one of these studies many years ago, a different cohort, we found the couples that were happiest were when the wife took up the husband's hobbies. Yeah, so the husband wanted to golf and the wife went along golfing, that was great, they were happy. If she didn't want to golf, there was a problem, right? Hopefully, gender roles have changed a little bit, and people are a little more flexible. Relationships with your friends change, right? How many of you have primarily work-based friends, right? And all of a sudden, you're not there every day. And you want to go out to lunch or coffee, but they've got a deadline, right? So, and this is especially a problem for people who retire early, in their 50s, when all of their friends are working, right? My sister did that, and she had a really hard time because she didn't want to work, and she didn't have to, but everybody else was working, right? So how do you find new friends, right? How many people go to senior centers? Right. Okay, one, yeah. Some, right? But most folks I know say that's for old folks. They won't do that, right? So how do you find new friends? And it's a challenge. It's easy if you're in high school or college, and as you gradually get older, you know, people are absorbed with their families and their work and things like that, and so it's a challenge.
Join OSURA.
Pardon?
Join OSURA.
Join OSURA is a really good place to do that. Structure your day, right? You used to the alarm clock going off at 6 or 7 and, you know, getting up and doing things, and you've got X amount of time to get ready and feed the dog and feed the kids and get yourself to work, and you've got to commute and da-da-da-da, and then you don't get home till 5. Okay, all of a sudden, you don't have a reason, often, to get out of bed, right? And for a while, that's sort of nice, right? But then, it's maybe not good, right? So you don't want to turn into a person who spends the day in the bathroom in front of the television, right? It's not a good thing to do. Okay, and so how do you connect and contribute to your community when you retire? And a lot of people do that, and I'll talk about that in some ways in a minute. Questions, comments? So you have to plan for the psychological and social changes, right? In ancient China, it used to be that for the top government officials, it was expected that you would take up a hobby like calligraphy or something like this, and gradually spend more of your time doing your calligraphy until you sort of faded out of the picture, but you were planning already for what you were going to do post-retirement, right? And I don't think very many people do that. Some people might, right? But, okay, so you're going to have all this time, and you say, great, you know, I'm going to finally get the house cleaned up, I'm going to sort all my pictures, I'm going to get my garden into shape, I'm going to get my dog trained finally, because I can't stand the barking, you know. Okay, and that's the first 3-4 months. And then what do? Right? So you have to plan, right? Just like you have to plan finances. Like, it's really not a good idea to retire without figuring out how much money you're going to have to retire on, right? Similarly, it's not a good idea to retire until you have some idea of what you might want to do in retirement, right? And some people have a lot of plans. As I said, a lot of people may start up small businesses, right? Or they might, you know, they've made a ton of money, you know, on Wall Street, and now they want to give back to the community, so they become teachers or something like this. But it's a way of examining who you are and what you want to do and what brings you joy, right? In the absence of your routine, which is structured by work, right? And I've got to say, for folks who were in the military and who have combat, often being in a nice structured environment keeps all those memories at bay. You're too busy to think about it. But once you retire, sometimes these memories start returning, because it's very normal for people to do life reviews, and some people have lived through some really horrific times. So you have to say, you know, you have to do sort of a psychological as well as a social check, you know. You need to take care of your physical and mental health. A lot of people, their job in retirement is taking care of their physical health, right? I finally would get to go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week, which I really should do, you know, or walk 4 miles a day, right? take care of mental health is really important, right? What do you do that you enjoy doing? Continue activities, especially those that you find meaningful, purposive. Try new activities, right? Meet new people, right? Build in enough solitary time, right? So, because you're going to need to be reflective. You know, whenever you do a transition, it's a challenge to your own identity. And it's an opportunity to find out, okay, so I'm not that anymore. Who am I now? And that takes time and thought. Be productive, set goals, right? Maybe you want to save enough money so that you can do a round-the-world trip, right? That's some people's dream of doing that. Or buy a cabin up in the mountains, you know, the grandkids can go to and you can spend summers in. You know, what are your goals? Thinking about your legacy, generativity. A good colleague of mine retired, and he's spending his time trying to talk to senior citizen groups about climate change, because he finds that's the group that's least likely to think that it exists and it's a problem. And his take on it is, what are we leaving our kids and our grandkids, right? Do they really want a world without birds and bees? Or emperor penguins, or New York City, or Florida, for that matter. So think about what your mark is, right? You made a mark at work, but what's another mark you might want to make? Or not. Some people are more focused on family, right? And they want to spend time with their kids, grandkids, help their daughter out. You know, she's working, right? I know a lot of folks who retire when their kids have kids. Okay, so how do you figure out when to retire? So this was a study done by some folks in my college, graduate student Chen and Rob Stowski. And what they did was they used a health retirement study. And they found that the longer you worked, the lower your mortality risk over 18 years. They don't really know why. And this is controversial, because some people find that if you, especially if you have a very stressful job and you retire early, then actually that's protective of your health. And some people we found in a different study that retiring too early or too late was also problematic for people's mental health. But, you know, work provides meaning and purpose and supportive relationships and things like that. But what was nice about this study, there's two things. One of which is they controlled for pre-existing health. So we didn't get the retired because you were ill and then you had a problem. But what they found was that people who were in poor health, who spent a lot of their days exercising, actually lived as long as the people who retired later and who were in good health. Right? So what you do with this gift of time in retirement is really important. Right? And it is a gift. I mean, this is the first time in history that we've had economies that were wealthy enough that allows people to live for 20 or 30 years without engaging in so-called productive activity. That there's enough extra wealth generated that you don't have to work until you drop dead in the south, as it were, right? So it's a gift. And the question is, what do you do with that gift? Questions? So how do you use your time in retirement? Right? A friend of mine wrote a great article called The Busy Ethic, which he said that retirees often said they were busier now than when they were working, in part because they jammed a lot of activities in, or sometimes it's because they just took a lot longer to do things, right? So I had an 80-year-old uncle who lived in Leisure World, and he had a really full day. You know, he got up and he read the paper, and then you cleaned up the kitchen, and then you had lunch, and then you looked at the newspapers to figure out where the cheapest chicken was, right? And then you did a little shopping, and then you came back, and you had a nap, and then you had dinner, And he had a really full day. He took, and he went shopping with me and was absolutely appalled because I was working, you know, and so I just raced through the grocery store and tossed things in, and, you know, and he said, no, you have to compare all the prices. Right? And I said, I sort of know what these cost, and I know the brands I like, and I have 15 minutes, you know, and so there's a lot of ways of structuring your time. But sort of productive, meaningful activity is really important. One thing people do is to return to talents that they may have abandoned earlier. So how many of you have seen that clip of this 80-year-old woman dancing on Britain's Got Talent? Yeah. I almost showed that, but I didn't have time. It's a great clip I can send people. So there's a woman who, she and her husband retired to Spain, right? Because that's what British do, is you retire to Spain where there's actually a little bit of sunshine. And after 3 or 4 years, he died. And there she was in Spain, right? Not knowing a whole lot of folks, and didn't want to go back to England. And so she said, well, she used to be a dancer, and she gave that up when she got married and had kids, right? And so she said, maybe I'll go back to dancing. And so there's a great clip on YouTube. And the British, She's Got Talent people are really snotty and just they're looking and, you know. And she's there, she's about that tall and weighs maybe 90 pounds, right? And her partner is 40 years younger and is tall, right? And a guy. And they start very slowly and they say, oh, this is terrible. And then she starts, you know, just twirling and whirling and getting thrown around, and everybody is totally amazed, right? So a lot of people, you know, when you get married and you go to work, you give up stuff. Maybe you love playing piano. Maybe you loved painting or sculpture, right? Maybe you loved hiking, and you just haven't had time for it. And so retirement is an opportunity to go back and pick up on that part of you that you had to abandon, right? In service of making a job and having a family and stuff like that. Grandkids. As I said, a lot of people I know retire when their daughters or sons have kids, and they're still working, and childcare is horrendously expensive. You guys know how much it costs, right? It's a lot of money. What, $3-4 grand for infant care a month? You know, it's a lot. And so they'll help out, you know, a couple of days a week, split it with the other 6 grandparents or whatever. But just helping folks out. And community service. If you look at who serves on the boards of community, who did we just elect in Ward 7? Somebody who has retired, right? So retired folks end up running the communities often. They serve on church boards, they serve on community boards, they serve as city councilors, they may run for mayor. They do a lot of what Ivan Illich called shadow work, right? Stuff that's incredibly important to the economy and the community, but it's not paid, right? So all of the child care, all of the caregiving, right? Something like billions and billions of dollars in goods and services are provided by caregivers to people that they're taking care of, right? All the work to run the community, a lot of times it's retired folks. If you look at homeless shelters, right? A lot of times people who are volunteering for the soup kitchens are retired folks. Right? So there's actually a great deal of productive work that seniors do to fill a gap in the community. And that's even more true for rural folks, right? Because a lot of rural places, the stores that are critical to keeping a community alive, the gas stations, right? The general store, are run by seniors. And if they retire, they can't find other people to buy their businesses. And the community may go. Similarly, the average age of a farmer in America is what? 55. Right? They're boomers who are retiring. Who's going to do the food when all the older farmers? A lot of times kids don't want to go into farming. It's too hard. Right? And so, so there's some extension programs that try to hook up people who want to get into farming with seniors who are looking for someone to take over their farms. And that's going to be really, really critical. So, volunteering during retirement has been shown to increase life satisfaction. I was talking to some folks at the Senior Gleaners, but this was done in Sacramento, not the local one here. They talk about people who come in and who are maybe, having a hard time walking, having mobility problems, depressed, sort of isolated. They come in and start volunteering, and they get a new lease on life, right? They can use their talents to help other people. So the Senior Gleaners in Sacramento started with 12 people who were just gleaning the fields. And when I was there 15 years ago, they were doing 40,000 meals a month for folks, and probably more now. And there's a local Senior Gleaners that's also very active. Those who volunteer during retirement have fewer psychological symptoms and increases psychological well-being. Might even lower your blood pressure, which is a good thing, right? Increases the feeling of purpose and meaning in life. And you want to pick something that you enjoy doing, right? Some people, I know of one guy who always took a nap in the afternoon, and so he simply went to the local ICU for the NICU for kids who were born with AIDS, and had a nap when the kids were sleeping on him. Right? He's got a nap and the kids need cuddling. So this is killing two birds with one stone, right? And so if you want to volunteer, I'm going to finish up. So one of the things that my center does is to run the life registry. And the life registry is open to anybody 55 and older, 50 and older, in the state of Oregon. So I think you almost all would qualify. And it's basically a subject pool. So we keep your name and contact information, a couple of basic demographics, and then our researchers who are looking for people to do studies can contact you and say, hey, do you want to do this? Right? You don't have to do it if you don't want to, if you don't have time. It's a way of earning a little bit of money, or sometimes just giving back. If you talk to people who volunteer for research of this type, it's usually because they're giving back to the community. We've got actually 800 about folks who've been cleaning it up a little bit. And there's a bunch of research projects. We have people who are looking at caregiving. We have people who are looking at, I'm looking at older veterans, which is one of the groups that I study. We have people who are looking at why seniors won't use their backup cameras, even though they're the group most likely to back over things. And so they're often fun, and they're quick to do. Pardon? And some of them are surveys, so you don't have to leave your house even to do this. Okay. And if you simply go to the Center for Healthy Aging Research's webpage on campus, you can just Google it or search for it, and there's a way of clicking and just signing up for the registry. It takes about 5 minutes. Okay. Last but not least, this is beyond finances, but I gotta say, one thing you have to be careful of. There's the economists have discovered this classical U-shape between expenditures in retirement, and it actually goes down until about age 75, and then it starts going back up again. So you have to be really careful, because as your healthcare costs go up, you have to plan for having more money later on in retirement than you need when you first retire. Okay. I've got a lot of online resources you can check out. I can send you a copy of this page if you want. But, all right, that's all I have to say. Questions, comments? Yeah?
I'd just comment that I've been in about 2 or 3 studies of this through the Life Registry.
Great.
I finished the 6-month Linus Pauling vitamin study. I don't know if I was a placebo or the vitamins. I did a kinesiology one where I did exercises and they took pictures of me in all different shapes and forms. That was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Smell tests and taste tests, and they're very interesting. I do it because I'm curious about the results.
Yeah, and they should send you results too. If they don't, bug them. Other questions?
Other questions or comments?
How many of us retire in the next 5 years or so? Yeah, okay, good. You keep retiring. And I keep getting you back. Okay.
Like, I'm gonna retire, but from teaching, but not from research.
So you're gonna become a marriage secretary? There's getting to be some interesting restrictions on that, so check and see. Because there's a, well, it's not so relevant, but there's a problem with human subjects, but there may be a problem with animal stuff too. So they're saying that if you're retired, you can't be a PI.
And I can't be a PI.
Yeah, and I'm not certain that's true. I've heard different things, but it's something I think we need to keep an eye on and make certain that we can do this. There's some sort of weird IRB rule that they're interpreting.
And also to serve as a mentor, I need to figure out.
Yeah. So, okay. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? I think it was a fantastic presentation. It really did some things, so we need to be aware of it.
Yeah.
No doubt about that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's give our hand to go.
We'll stick around just to see what other people
Oh, just
have
to see what
experienced.
kind of lies we tell us.
I have a question.
Sure.
Have you ever seen any information about whether, like, the age that somebody began working has anything to do with how long they work, if they retire or work after retirement?
My guess is, and this is sheer speculation, not completely, but if you start working very, very young, you probably come from a fairly poor background. Right? And the first slide I showed that people with less education tend to retire earlier. In Brazil, they had a rule that you could retire after 30 years, regardless of what age you started. Some people started working when they were 8. So they were retiring when they're 38, and that was breaking the economy. They couldn't afford to have that many people out of the workforce. So my guess is that people who started very, very early may retire early, but that's speculation. On the other hand, you started early and you really love what you do, maybe you say, I mean, there's lots of sort of biopics now on dancers, right? Who are dancing when they're 80, who've been ballerinas their whole life, and now they're teaching, they're still dancing. There are several of those when I was Googling. I also, by the way, the Healthy Aging Club has a Facebook page where we post just interesting articles and examples of people who are aging well, or new medical treatments and things like that. If you just on Facebook and you Google OSU Healthy Aging Club, or not Google, you use the search function, it'll come up. And we love having people see what we're doing and make comments and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
The second part of our program involves the amateurs, and these are all people who have retired from OSU. And we'll tell you a little bit about what works or doesn't work for them, as the case may be. So the panel involves Terry Tower, who's over there. We're going to sit up here in the front, I guess, and look at you guys. And Gordon Restad, Mary Mary Flayheim, and myself. And Terry's going to start out, and I'm sort of going to monitor things. So we'll talk about 10 minutes, but we want this to be interactive. So we want you guys to ask questions. This isn't us giving a lecture to you, okay? This is us telling you a little bit about what we found works for us in retirement, or maybe doesn't work for us in retirement. And we want questions from you or discussion from you as well. So we're going to start with Terry.
Well, I'm really glad when Carol introduced us that he said that we would be the amateurs. And then when Carolyn was giving her presentation, I thought, I missed that one. That you thing that she showed, the financial stuff, I don't know where I messed up, but mine's kind of gone like this. So I reversed that, and instead of leaving a mark or a legacy, I'm just hoping not to leave too many demerits behind when I'm gone, with the stuff I've collected in the house and trying to disperse, you know, all the stuff that I've managed to accumulate around me. One thing about retirement is that retirement in and of itself is kind of an event, but being retired is a process, and it happens over time, and it changes over time. What you were doing the first couple of years of being retired is going to be different than what your last 20 years. Just, you know, last 20, well, whatever, however many years you've got in there. And that's something that I discovered, is that the initial part of my retirement ended up being caretaking for my elderly mother. Even to the point that it was the day of my retirement party when she was staying at my house, that night she ended up going to the emergency in the hospital because she collapsed from congestive heart failure. So the next two years of my retirement were like working half-time, helping to take care of my mom's needs because she lived in place and stayed in place in Salem. So I did a lot of driving back and forth, you know, on I-5 and doing that. And then after she died and passed away, then I had another year and a half that I was taking care of the property and doing projects around their house, my parents' house, getting ready to sell it, blah, 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 blah. So it was 3.5, 4 years before I really hit full retirement, what I considered was going to be my full retirement mode. And even though you go into your later years thinking, well, I know at some point in time in the future, I may be needing to take care of my aging parents, my aging spouse, my, you know, somebody who's sick or whatever like that. You're thinking in the future, but it's also important to know that the future may be a lot more immediate than you think it's going to be. And so it pays to, you know, it's good to pay attention to that and have it in mind for what you've got going on. I'm one of those people who has, in the 80%, who has really enjoyed retirement, even with some of those 20% issues, you know, for people, you know, for financial or whatever, or for caregiving and those kinds of things. But I love an unstructured day. I'm not a person, that's another thing, you know, that Carolyn was talking about, saying structure your day, set goals. Oh shoot, I'm so lazy. You know, I think I'm gonna sleep in this morning, and then I'm gonna walk the dog, and then I'm gonna post some things for sale on eBay, and then I'm gonna go do this and that. And I think that's one of the true treasures of retirement, is that you get to fill in the blanks. You know, while you're working, it's get up, get ready, go to work, come home, fix dinner, you know, whatever, you know, everything's kind of laid out. But in retirement, get up, and then the rest of those blanks are yours. You get to choose what you're going to put in there, whether it's volunteer activities, whether it's a special project, whether it's a hobby, whether it's getting together with friends, you know, it's all of those different kinds of things. And so I'm a person who also loves to read. When I was working, my eyes were so tired from computer work and reading stuff at work, I could barely get through the newspaper at night. Now, I can plunge into a mystery series and start reading one book, and I just finished book number 19 of a series that I just started into a couple of months ago, where I can go through a book in, you know, a couple of days, and it's just so much fun to have that kind of freedom. I also like to do jigsaw puzzles and take more leisurely dog walks and stuff like that. And so those are the types of things that I've really enjoyed doing in that unstructured time. Socializing, I'm single, and I live alone out in the country. So I'm not in town. It's about a 15-minute drive to town, and I live with a dog and 3 cats. And so socializing for me was really based in the work world. So one of the things that I found that I wanted to do after I retired was to maintain the social atmosphere that I had relied on with colleagues. I joined OSURA. I was invited to join OSURA, to join the board. OSURA, by the way, is the acronym for the OSU Retirement Association. So for those of you who aren't familiar with that. And so I have found that's been a wonderful organization because, one, it's very flexible and relaxed. You do what your involvement is your own. And you don't have to be a couple. There's, you know, for those of us who are single, there are often events or activities where you have to have a partner of some kind before you really feel welcome. Well, as a single person, OSURA is wonderful because you just kind of float in, float out. It doesn't matter if you come as a 1 or a 2 or a 3. And I also joined a women's organization called PEO, one of the local PEO chapters. And that opened up a whole new realm of acquaintances and women to do things with in the community. So I really like that. And then I also do fundraising for that organization for women's scholarships. And so some of the eBay sales that I do are fundraising for that organization. And so that kind of keeps me in touch with students and what's going on in higher ed and those kinds of things. One thing that what is important to remember is that you have developed skills, talents, abilities. There are things that you know how to do that you learned over the course of work. You don't lose those when you retire. You take them with you. And so use them to volunteer. Use them to teach a course for the Academy of Lifelong Learning. You know, use those organizational skills to organize activities for some kind of group. So don't stop using them. You know, keep those things going on. One thing that there is a concern that we were talking about is that in that process of retirement is also a process of aging. It isn't just your body, it isn't just your own personality and psyche. If you have a house, your house is also aging, and there's all sorts of repair projects or things like that going on. If you have pets, your pets are also aging. And so it isn't just your bodies and medical issues, but you're dealing with the aging of other things around you. And some days it just feels like everything's falling apart. You know, something went wrong with the water treatment system, you gotta take a dog to the vet, your foot hurts, you know, it just gets to be a whole bunch of stuff. And then also to expect that your interests as well as your abilities may change over time. I live, like I said, out in the country and under trees, and I have lots of leaves. For 30 years, I've lived in this house now. And in those first 10, 20 years in that house, I would get out in the fall and I'd be cleaning up those leaves. I'm going, I'm not gonna let this grass die, I'm gonna get out there and work. Well, now I'm at the point I look out at the leaves and I go, yeah, the grass can die. Those leaves just don't have the same attraction that they used to have. And of course, what I'm also in the process of, I'm 13, 14 years in retirement now, and I'm deciding whether to stay in place. Do I stay in my house? Do I sell my house? Do I become a renter? You know, how else can I help my finances? Do I look at a reverse mortgage? You know, do I downsize? Do I move? You know, what do I do? Well, I don't have any answers to those things yet, but those are all questions that are in my stage right now. But I just, you know, hope that all of you end up in the 80% of fun time and people who enjoy their retirement, because there's just so many opportunities and fun things to do. So, I think I've
Questions for Terry?
Or just do the whole panel
Yeah, we'll do it
first.
later.
Oh, okay.
Any questions here? Yeah.
What does PEO stand for?
Oh, PEO is an international women's organization that's a philanthropic educational organization. And it has been around since 1859. It's the same age as OSU. And it started with a group of feisty women at Iowa Wesleyan College because they were a myth that they didn't get invited to join a literary club that the men were all involved with. And so they formed their own group. And it started from there, and then it became a community-based it's called the Sisterhood, a community-based sisterhood. Really good organization. Millions of dollars into scholarships for women and promoting women ever since then.
And what does PEO specifically?
Best to just call it Philanthropic Educational Organization. It's a secret of the sisterhood, you know, kind of thing. But it's a philanthropic educational organization, yeah.
When you were in that period right after you retired and of other obligations, family obligations you had in the house, How did that, did you see any changes in how you thought about retirement? Like, did you put off planning altogether, or did you just kind of gradually get into the idea of what you would do?
Yeah, I kind of did a little bit of both. Part of it, there was an immediate need to take care of my mom and to figure out how I was going to manage that. And there was also, but I was still early in retirement and there were a lot of things that I wanted to do. So I worked with my siblings. I have 2 older brothers and I worked with them and then my mom's neighbors, things. So I could balance out to still do things. But even then there's some, unanticipated types. Even if you plan, like I was going to go on a Nature Conservancy birding trip down in the Malheur, and I had signed up and I thought, I don't need travel insurance. Lo and behold, the day before I was to leave on that was the day my mother died. And it's like, my advice to you guys is, buy travel insurance. If you're going to go on a trip and you just don't know if there's question marks out there, do the travel insurance. But no, I still did stuff. I didn't just limit myself to that one thing.
And you said it was like part-time.
Well, I sort of looked at it as part-time.
Sure.
But, 3 or 4 days a week, up and down the freeway and those kind of things, yeah.
I think that comment she made about buying travel insurance is really an important one. We have a friend whose husband they were traveling in Indonesia, and he broke his leg and his hip. It was a nasty break. And it was $50,000 to leave home, but they had the travel insurance. So unless you're willing to put out that kind of money when you're abroad, for a few extra bucks, you got the travel insurance, and it can really save a lot of problems. Plus, they take care of everything. I mean, if you're abroad and you've got a problem, even in this country, if you've got a problem and you don't have anybody to go to, you're going to be rattled just from having that problem, much less trying to figure out how you're going to deal with getting home and getting someone who's ill or hurt home. So anyway, I think that's just a great suggestion.
You mentioned that you were thinking about how you could keep your finances. When you first retired, did you feel that you had adequate funding for the rest of your life, or you're just going to wing it, or has this been a result of inflation?
I retired knowing that I was not going to have as much money as I really needed to have to retire. And I made that decision consciously. I thought, okay, I'm going to pull from my IRA, I'm going to rely on PERS, and then when Medicare kicked in, I would save on health insurance. And so I was pretty aware that finances was going to be a challenge, and I made that conscious decision. Having made that conscious decision at that point in time is different than now dealing with it, 14 years later, because, the financial part of it has really been a challenge for me. As a single person, one retirement, not a high wage earner, all of those things combined then as expenses go up. And it isn't any cheaper. There used to be a myth that being retired was cheaper or less expensive than, when you're working in a career. I didn't find that to be true because I was doing stuff with hobbies. I was spending more money on different kinds of things. And I drove just as much as I did when I worked, if not more. So anyway, yeah, the financial part was going to be a challenge for me no matter what. And I knew that going into it. Now I'm trying to get really creative.
Any other questions for Terry? Okay, we'll move on to Gordon. Gordon Reestead.
Yeah. Yes, I've been retired almost 15 years now, and like Terry, I'm in the 80%, very much enjoying it, and I hope your planning for retirement is going well, and I hope that you have a great retirement. Like our main speaker said, you need to do some planning. It's a real transition, and you need to do some planning. And I'd like to give you some advice, but nobody likes advice, especially from somebody with as much gray hair as I have. So I'm going to say I'm going to give you some tips and of what has worked for me. And there are three things that have really been useful for me. First is that, again, as was mentioned before, I transitioned into retirement. I went half-time for the first 3 years. The second thing is that I went to retirement planning programs like you are here. This one and also a financial planning one, or a couple of those. And I'll elaborate on that a little bit. And the third thing that helped me is that I embraced a top 25 or top 10 list. And again, I'll reflect a bit more on that. The halftime transition, I think, was a lifesaver for me. I could have been like that football coach that was mentioned if I would have gone cold turkey, because I was in a fairly high pressure job here at OSU and was putting in 55 to 60 hours a week. And if I didn't drop dead shortly after I retired cold turkey from that, I'd have probably got a divorce. My wife wouldn't have liked having me around all that time. So anyway, if you can transition, I would suggest that. The retirement planning sessions were really good for me. There was a question to Terry about did she plan on having enough money? Did it look like she was going to have enough? Well, I'm an engineer. I did spreadsheets and so on. But there's always so much uncertainty there when you do that, that I relied on things like, people said, well, if you have half the earnings that you have when you're being paid regularly, you'll be okay. Well, again, I don't think that's true, but I had more than that, so I thought I was okay. But I did do projections and so on, and they have continued to do that, and that's a part of my daily, not daily routine, part of my regular routine is financial aspects throughout the year. But I really found the sessions like this useful for me. And I need my slide. I've got just one slide, and one of the presenters introduced this at the session that I was at, and they called it the interaction amoeba. And before retiring, this is what my interaction amoeba looked like. So I had family, I had a little bit of church, fairly small amount of travel. Exercise, I tried to do some exercising, but it was limited to some extent, and I had very few hobbies. But then a big part of that amoeba was OSU and professional society work. And so as I retired, the presenter said, well, you're going to lose that. And I thought, well, maybe not. So then, I don't know exactly when I saw the movie, but have any of you seen the movie All About Schmidt, or something like that, by Jack Nicholson?
Somebody was telling me about this.
Yeah.
What's the title again?
The title, I think, is All About Schmidt.
Mary?
It's a movie, it's about 2002 movie, I believe. Jack Nicholson. He's a big wheel in an insurance company, and it starts out with a big retirement party for him, and everybody's congratulating him on retiring and everything. And saying, come on back and see us and so on. And he buys an RV, a big RV, and then he and his wife start getting the RV ready to go, and he goes out to the RV, and his wife is dead in the RV. She just collapsed and died in the RV. And so anyway, he's trying to put his life together, and he says, well, I'll go back to work, not go back to work, but I'll go visit my buddies at work. He goes in there, and as he's walking into the office he was in, here's all these boxes of stuff that he worked on for the last 30 years, getting ready to be thrown away. And he goes in and talks to the guy that took his job, and the guy said, well, what are you doing here? "Oh, I just came in to visit." And so they start visiting, and the guy looks at his watch, looks at his watch, and looks at his watch. And it's like it was said, they're busy, they've got deadlines to meet, they don't have a lot of time. So anyway, that lobe for me was fairly well cut off, okay? I went into administration here, so I didn't have research to sort of go along with. And so anyway, I had to, what it did to me, what that session did for me was to say, you need to focus on replacing those lobes with some things, which means either making all of these things bigger or something else. And so basically that's what I did. I made those things bigger. I started some new hobbies. I started volunteering, and I joined OSURA. I didn't join OSURA right away, but after a couple of years I joined OSURA, and I found that that helped replace the OSU thing because it was connected with OSU, which I've got a lot of loyalty, having worked here for a long time. And it allowed me to interact with some of my previous colleagues, but also to meet a whole variety of new colleagues that I hadn't met before. And as going through with OSURA, or working with OSURA, I found the importance of it. And I think one of the and that's why I've continued to be involved in it, is that I think it is important. And as Terry said, I think it's particularly important for single people because, as she said, many times there are activities where a couple is the designated invitee, so to speak. So, this thing is a visual thing which helped remind me of this, and I did work on that. I took up some new hobbies, bird watching and reading, much more reading than I used to do. A couple other things from those sessions was be careful about too much managing at home. And that was mentioned. It was emphasized in the previous sessions that I've gone to, and I think was very important. One thing that wasn't mentioned too much today so far is that the person talked about the aging in retirement. And there is the concept of aging, and this person indicated that they're young old, which is up to 75. These are sort of norms. Old, 75 to 85, and old, 85 plus. And it certainly doesn't hold with everybody, but the bottom line is that on that is that if there's something you want to do, you probably better plan on it sooner rather than later. The third thing that I mentioned was good for me was top 25 lists. And I was really introduced in this into a communications seminar that the university put on for a number of years. And I adopted this for my personal life about retirement time. My wife and I made lists. We separated ourselves and made our own lists, and then we compared them and then sifted them down some. And have a story on that. We tried to make a top 10 for each year. And about the year 2000, after seeing something on TV, my wife said, let's go to Yellowstone Park for New Year's. I said, are you crazy? I said, West Yellowstone is always the coldest place in the lower 48. And I said, is it on your list? She said, yes. So we did it. It was great. But anyway, major items on my list, top 25 list, were keeping family relations. Her mother and aunt lived in town, had moved here because she was an only child and her aunt had no children. Our 2 sons and their families, and my extended family. So I wanted to devote time to that. Travel, we both wanted 1 or 2 major trips per year. Home projects and gardening, we both enjoyed those type of activities. The new hobbies I mentioned, birding, and I also did more golfing. I'm getting to the point where golfing is difficult for me, so I'm going to have to find something new. Service, there are a variety of service things that I have done through my church and again through OSURA, which also falls into group activities. I have done OSURA a fair amount. Bridge, I've taken up that. I've always liked cards. And ALL, I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but it was spun off by OSURA when OSURA was first formed, and it's Academy for Lifelong Learning. And they run classes out at the church out here on a whole variety of topics. Really a tremendous program. I was sorry that OSURA spun it off because I think it was such a successful program of OSURA's. And then the more routine things that I've been doing, exercising, I mentioned reading, and I also mentioned financial planning. So I'll just leave you with, again, retirement for me has been great. I hope it's as great for you as it has been for me. Do some planning.
Thank you. Questions for Gordon? What's been your favorite new activity?
What's that?
What's been your favorite new activity?
Well, I have enjoyed quite a few of them in different ways. I mean, I've greatly enjoyed the birding for a while, but now I've seen most of the birds around here locally, and so I don't see too many new birds, so I've drifted away from that. Reading, I still enjoy reading substantially, but I found that at my age I can't read the thrillers because I usually do most of my reading before going to bed, and that impacts my sleep. So anyway, those have been some very favorite activities, as well as the OSURA. I have really enjoyed that much more than I expected. Along with that, that got me into women's basketball.
Oh, yeah.
And
How did you decide on what service groups or projects to do? Did they come to you, or did you think about going, how did you get all?
I think I just thought about them and went to those, yeah. There were some that are very laudable out there, but I've never gotten around to volunteering for that. but a lot of opportunity for volunteering. And some of them, you're restricted, or you get restricted in terms of the type of job that you can do, because some of them are physical. That's probably where my greater talent was for a while, but is no longer there. Yes?
Did you feel a loss of identity when you retired, and was it difficult to reinvent yourself?
Yes, I did. That was a struggle to some extent, the loss of purpose. And fortunately, my son that's local here, he bought an old house, which he should have bulldozed, but he didn't. And he remodeled it, and he did a lot of the work himself along with me, and so I spent a lot of time on that. And that helped me with that purpose thing. And then I got involved in OSURA. That helped me with that. And then my past sort of faded away a little bit. So, yeah, I think that's a real issue. Yes.
Are most of the OSURA or the ALL activities campus-based or Corvallis-based, or are they more like Portland or?
Well, the OSURA thing is mostly based here, although there are some activities that have gone up to Portland, like we went to the museum up there in Portland. They've gone to the coast for some programs and so on. They've gone to Southern Oregon.
Do you take your own vehicle or?
Well, in the past, there have been buses rented.
We do both. Sometimes it's close enough. We just had a wonderful presentation over at the Stallbush Island Farms a couple of weeks ago. And even the owner, Carla Chambers, spent time with us and talked about their sustainable agricultural operation and things like that. So, you know, it's just a real variety of stuff that goes on.
Okay, thank you very much, Gordon. And now we'll hear from Mary.
Oops, my thing just went off, so my notes are on. So I guess I'm going to start by saying probably if you've met one OSU retiree, all you've done is met one OSU retiree. We're all probably very different, and I'll probably be different in 2 years from now. I retired August 1st, not this August 1st, but the one before that. So it's been 15 months and how many days? Unlike many people, I'm a retired mathematics professor, and maybe it goes because they're mathematicians, but many of my colleagues knew when they were going to retire when they started their job. And for some of them, it hasn't even changed. You know, they have to stay. I was different. I mean, I enjoyed my job. Why was I going to determine when the end of it was going to be? But also, when it kind of came time, I sort of knew it, and that was fine, and that was where I wanted to be. Part of it was that because of administrative responsibilities and just responsibilities to the university, I found I didn't really have enough time to write up my results that I've been doing, and so that made a big difference, thinking about retirement. So what I did, though, when I realized, you know, this is probably something I want to be entering into pretty soon, I made 3 kinds of lists. One was a list that I would go to, a list of things that I wanted to do or I thought I should do. Some of them would just require an hour, and other ones would require a week maybe. And I constructed that list so I would have it if I became bored or felt it loose ends or something, I would go to it and kind of a reality check, you know. I don't think I've referred to that list, I've only added things to it, so I think that's good news. Another list was a list of friends. And you know, you're working and there's so many people that you still consider your friends, but you haven't even been in contact with them at all in how many years. And so I had that list. People that I would email to, you know, all of these friends to whom I wasn't connected as strongly as I wanted to be. And one thing I've done over the past year and 3 months is have lunch with these people. And it's really been delightful. And, you know, for some of them, maybe occasionally we'll meet again. But in my neighborhood, there's a group of people that are, I guess I'll call us young retirees, or at least retirees. I won't put ages on it. And we're almost like each other's playmates. They're, you know, you'll find maybe people close to you that you'll have as friends. And my third list was of possible volunteer work. And it turns out the things I'm volunteering for now weren't things that were on that list, but I still have that list that I can go to. Okay, so since I'm maybe the most recent of the 4 of us having retired, I want to bring up a couple of things that I think you should do. I recommend when you hand in your papers for retirement, you go up to Salem. Look at it as a graduation event. You're handing in the papers. In addition, so I did it last May with a friend. We went up, and I did it a couple of weeks ago with a friend who was submitting his papers. And both times the people found little things that were wrong. And the other day I asked the person from hers, and she said, yeah, you know, there are these little mistakes, and then you have to try to get them corrected. It seems like not a waste of time to go up there, but also, as I said, there's this ritual graduation that you must attend. And then also the other thing is Salem has interesting things you can do after it, so it's a recommendation. A question that I've been asked many times that I don't really want to answer is, people ask me what my retirement plans are, now that I have all this extra time to fill. It hasn't been extra time, and I don't know how many of you know this book by Ursula Le Guin, No Time to Spare. I don't think I've gotten through any of her science fiction books, but this is almost like poetry in a way. She wrote some blogs the last few years of her life, and maybe I'll read something to you from here. So I told you about going up to Salem, and the other thing I've done this past 2 Septembers, one of the first days of school, what would be the first day of school on campus, I've taken Amtrak up to Portland by myself and just played up in Portland. It was delightful. So I plan on doing that next year too, and maybe I'll see you people up there. So you want me to read what Ursula does with her time? Well, I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. What provoked this on her part was she got a questionnaire from the school, her college, asking what she did in her spare time. And she thought about this for a while, and she started listing things. I am free, but my time is not. My time is fully and vitally occupied with, and this is the part I kind of love, with sleep, with daydreaming, with doing business and writing friends and family on email, with reading, with writing poetry, with writing prose, with thinking, with forgetting, with embroidering, with cooking, and eating a meal, and cleaning up the kitchen, with construing Virgil, with meeting friends, with talking to my husband, and then it goes on, a lot of other things. Maybe the best one for me here is there's been so many mentions of dogs that I will say some things about cats. With lying down for an afternoon rest with my volume of Crazy Cat to read, and my own slightly crazy cat, as he arranges himself and goes instantly and deeply to sleep. None of this is spare time. I can't spare it. I'm going to be 81 next week. I have no time to spare. So it's a nice book. Yeah.
Thank you. Questions for Mary? Okay. I guess I've been retired the longest here. I retired from full-time work in '99, and in I retired completely. So I've been at it basically 20 years, and I'm in the 80%. I love it. I like taking a nap after lunch. But most of the things have been covered here, so I'm not going to repeat things, except I will say one hobby, or maybe it's not even a hobby. Yeah, I guess it's a hobby that I picked up that I didn't really think I would get involved with, is cooking. My wife is a very good cook, and so there was never any reason for me to be involved in cooking when I was working in the working world, because there was no way I could touch whatever she was doing, and besides, I didn't have an interest in it. But when I retired, I thought, what if something happens to her? What if she can't cook? And I'm out here by myself trying to get the food for both of us. This could be kind of ugly. So I started slowly cooking, and it drove her crazy. I mean, that's so. So, but I continued at it, and I would ask her lots of questions. By the way, I had always barbecued, so that's, I knew how to do that. But that's quite different. And now I would say I've become a reasonable cook. I'm at least happy with my food, and she is too, and she's very happy that I'm cooking. So so I guess the point of this story is, Dr. Alden was saying, well, you might drive your partner nuts on something you're trying to do, but maybe that will change over time. You don't know that unless you try. So anyway, and I hadn't really thought about that until you guys started bringing up some things. I just want to tell you a couple stories, because most of the things have been covered here. But the stories have a point to them. They go also with the stages of retirement. I'll say it a little differently than what I think Gordon did. I will say, and some retirees use this, there's the go-go years. There's the go-slow years, and there's the no-go years. And they are absolutely true unless you fall off a cliff or something like that. So when I was still in the go-go years, the very first year I was retired, I'd always been a downhill skier, or at least I grew up in Iowa, so I certainly wasn't a downhill skier in Iowa, okay? But I was fortunate enough to get a job here at Oregon State, and almost as soon as I was here, I started trying to learn to ski. And I became a decent skier, but I loved it. And so it had always frustrated me that I was restricted with skiing. I couldn't go the best time of the year usually, because that's in January, February, and I could only go weekends, and sometimes money was a problem, and so I didn't ski nearly as much as I wanted. But when I retired, I had a buddy who said, yeah, I'd like to get out and ski more. And another buddy said the same thing, so the three of us decided, okay, we're going to do a ski trip, and we'll take off from Corvallis, and we'll go up to Washington, and we'll ski in Washington, one place in Washington, and then we'll go over to Montana, and we'll ski at Big Mountain in Montana, and then we'll go on up into Canada, and we'll ski at Fernie in Canada. So, okay, so and we're going to take about a week, maybe a little over a week to do this. So we did this, and got up to Schweitzer Basin in Washington State, and it was cold. It was really cold, and the snow was hard. I thought it was an okay day, but it wasn't anything to write home about. We got up to Kalispell, Montana, and it was cold as hell. It was 20 below zero. And we said, we're not going to ski today. This is too cold. We're going to go on up to Fernie. So we go up to Fernie. And the first day is a pretty good day of skiing. And then that night, it snowed, and it snowed, and it snowed. And we had like 24 inches of just beautiful white kinds of powder, and it just went everywhere. So, out we were skiing, and it was a fantastic day, and toward the end of the day, we took a really steep run. And it was all through the powder, it was gorgeous skiing, and my buddy lost his ski on a really steep spot. And it was so steep, I hardly dared to even help him look for it. We even paid a guy $10, a snowboarder came down, we paid him $10 to try and help us find his ski. He couldn't find his ski. So finally, he had to ski down on one, and we made the rest, I made my way down. There was only, just the two of us were doing that run. The next summer, he found out he'd gone all the way to the bottom of the hill. So there was no way we were going to find the ski. But it was fabulous skiing. So what happened is that the next year, we invited a couple more people. Third year, we invited an MD from San Francisco, and by this time we were up to like 5 or 6 people. And we did a big circle trip. We started in Calgary, and we went down to Fernie, and then we went over to another small one, which I've forgotten, another small one I've forgotten, and then up to Kicking Horse, and then over to Lake Louise, and then to Sunshine, and we were gone 10 days, and it was just marvelous, just absolutely marvelous. And so this crew continued skiing together. We were a really tight group. I mean, we didn't want any more people, because if you get more people, you can't find a house to stay in. You can't, and you know, you can only put 6 people. We wanted our own bed. So anyway, it has continued up until about 3 years ago, when one of the guys had a bad break, broke his leg back. And so now we're still a group. We don't go to Canada anymore, but we ski at Bend now, because one ski has a house at Bend, so we can ski at that. So that's one story, and the second story I'll tell you is, how many of you know the name Emery Castle? Okay, a number of you do. Emery was a prof here in economics, agricultural economics. And then he went off to Washington, D.C. and worked in a think tank there called Resources for the Future for about 10 years. And he came back here and he was dean of graduate school. And I didn't get to know, I knew of Emery, but I didn't get to know him really well until he had retired and I had retired, and we met each other at church, and we realized we enjoyed reading the same kinds of books. And so Emery and I would get together once every few months, and we'd discuss a book just between the two of us. And that was great. And then I'm also a part of a book group that meets in Eugene, and Bob Smythe back here is also part of that book group. And one night we were coming back from Eugene, and I said to Bob and Mike, I said, gee, I'd sure like to start a book group that dealt with nonfiction, and that's what Emery and I have been reading, nonfiction books, a lot of economics books, he's an economist. They said, oh yeah, well we would too. And so we started a book group, and now we're up to 6 of us in this book group. And we've read 19 books, and some of them have been absolutely fabulous, and we really enjoyed the discussions. It's still going. It's something we can do in the go slow years. So anyway, what's the point of these stories, of these 2 stories? The point of these 2 stories is that if there's something you really want to do, and you really like to do it, but you don't think it goes so well by yourself, find one other person who would like to do that. And I guarantee you, if you're passionate enough about it, you will find other people to join you. Whatever it is, it might be knitting, it might be sewing, it might be cooking, it might be, you name it, it could be, whatever it is. But if you're passionate enough about it, you can find other people who will do it with you, and because people love having somebody else do some organization. You don't have to do all the organization. Anyway, that's my shtick. So thank you. questions for any of us? Yeah.
Very practical question. So my husband retired, I haven't yet, and we're clueless about this health insurance thing. How the PERS supposedly has some thing that you go to, but that's on top of Medicare. And how does it run? How did you decide what to do? And are you happy with your decision?
Well, I can answer. I took the first health insurance. I'm very glad I did. I look at it this way: health costs are obscene, it's crazy. So I don't want to be sitting with this Medicare. It might be enough, it might not be enough, but the quickest way to go broke, I think, in this country is to have healthcare breakthrough. So, you know, it costs you a few $100s a month more, that's bad. But, it's the,
Providence or United?
There's several options that you kind of look at and decide what fits your needs the best. I would add.
Motive is what
I would add to that I made a mistake when I first retired, in that I thought that the PEB insurance was going to be pretty much the same as the PERS insurance. So I continued on with the PEB insurance without knowing that if you take the PERS health insurance, there's actually a state subsidy for most people on that, for the PERS health insurance, and it's also a better financial deal. So as you're looking at that, people will tell you you can either do PEB or PERS.
You can do after retirement.
You used to be able to, but I would.
The website says no, but
Oh.
it's contradictory. So
Okay.
one place it says they're no longer
So-
available, and the other place says
Okay.
you can sign up.
But I
Well,
think what
maybe I
Terry's
could,
saying is take first.
Take PERS. Take the PERS, and they're excellent plans. And I have a PERS, I took one of the Advantage plans, so it combines Medicare with a
So
supplement.
you still pay Medicare?
Yeah.
And that's.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, your Medicare gets deducted from your Social Security,
Well, you can arrange that.
or arranged to have however, and then your additional cost, you can do a variety of ways. Yeah.
Yeah, even people I know that are pretty limited as far as their finances go, everybody has chosen some kind of supplement or,
Yeah.
you really
Still an
want
open
to.
question
Yeah.
as to whether.
So there's kind of two columns, there's a supplement and there's an advantage, and within each of them.
It's not that first
Another-
makes your money and manage it better, like your Medicare, it's separate.
Yes.
The other part is too, is if you want to be covered in other countries, look at the plans, because very few have that, that will eliminate a lot.
Yeah.
But if you don't find that
Providence
important,
now does, so maybe, it's worth asking how it's different.
Yeah.
I
And
I have
the,
friends that have Providence that are happy with it.
Yeah.
I'm Moda, like Carol is, and I'm happy with that. And recently, there was a Moda Advantage plan that got changed to a, I can't remember exactly what the name, United or something.
I think United was separate, I think Moda Advantage was dropped.
Right, that people were automatically switched to, I think, a United plan, and that person was happy for that, at least last year.
Okay.
Now, if you sign up for one of those, you can change, you can select a different one each year.
Each year.
There's an open enrollment.
except I think if you don't take PERS right away, you can never have.
Right.
Correct.
And if you drop the PERS, you can't get it back.
Okay, so
Yeah,
that's-
that's it,
Yeah,
yeah.
so we
Be
go
very careful
90
about
days,
that.
I think, after retirement,
I just
but.
tried.
See ya.
And the PERS, the PERS Health Insurance Plan Organization, whatever. Yeah, PHIP, they're very good. I've called them several times on the phone and gotten professional answers if I was confused by anything.
That's right, because I've been totally confused with their websites.
luckily there's people that come before us that have probably sorted out a
Yes,
lot.
always.
So I just,
And
I asked and then I checked that
Yeah.
what I learned was right.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of friends and acquaintances and said, what are you gonna do this year? You're gonna change, you're gonna stay with it? Because the
Yeah.
premiums change every year. I'm just switching right now from United. I've had United Healthcare this past year. I'm switching to one of the Providence plans.
And because we're Providence now, probably it's easier because we know who's accepting, so you can keep the same doctor.
Usually.
Great.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you
The
for
final
coming.
people, the final people.